I only wish you folks could see some of the stuff being said behind the scenes.
Well, we'd like to welcome you guys back to this episode. Oh, geez. Boy, did I. And it's my edit now, isn't it? We were talking behind the scenes and stuff, and, I just said, no, dude, save it, and which all the good stuff. And it's like the Beatles. You can't contain, and the association of me associating us to the podcast to the Beatles is hilarious, but you can't contain magic like that just pops into your head, just expect for it to happen on the whim. These are things that are magical. So all that stuff that we said before, it's like gone, man. We could have saved it.
Well, that's why I stopped. That's why I said, okay, wait a minute, stop, save it. You said, man, this would make a good, and I'm like, okay, stop, save it for the podcast.
Yeah, no, because I told Mark that, what was it that, so did you see, hey, Mark, did you see, here, we'll replay it. Hey, Mark, did you see the explosion in Beirut today? Yeah, I heard about it.
Yeah, I heard about it on the radio. I had to go into town today to go to an electrical supply shop. And I heard about it on the radio, but I didn't see any footage of it until you asked me about it before you pushed the magic red button.
Yeah.
And I just Googled it and went, holy cow. Yeah. So I've now seen it.
Well, no, because I mean, to me, because when I asked you about it, you said, no, I heard about it and I'll check it out later. I said, no, dude, you got to see it. Because to me, it was savage. It's not just like an explosion. It was like semi-exaggerated, like on the level of like war, like airplanes dropping.
You could tell it was not like a gas leak or propane or even a Oblivion or anything like that. This was ammonium nitrate. It's what it looked like to me. It's just an instantaneous boom, and there goes the shockwave.
Yeah.
It was just one of those things. It was just holy cow. And plus it was right there on the seaport. So water immediately vaporized, went flying up into the air, formed like a dome over the explosion site.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that was a big one.
I mean, one dude, the one that I guess you saw it already. He was filming from I don't know how many blocks away on the Penthouse outdoor restaurant, and he was just filming the bay or port or whatever in that area, that direction, and actually he was filming it because there was fire. But what happened after that fire and smoke was that explosion. But if you ever see those nuclear tests from the 1950s and whatever 40s, 50s, you'll see it hit, and then you'll see the plume, and then you'll see the shockwave coming towards the rubber village, like the little middle America fake towns, and it'll just so it had that kind of a vibe to it. And so I was like, whoa. I mean, this is on another level, but it turns out that you looked up a few more articles, and
I did see a few more things about it. And as a guy who spent his first enlistment in field artillery, I can tell you that just about all explosions make a mushroom cloud. But we tend to think of mushroom clouds and immediately think nuclear because that's the most famous image. But just about all explosions create a mushroom cloud.
Well, yeah, no, for sure. But
it was kind of, that one was big.
Right. I mean, so because of that, I mean, obviously when we just you'll see the flame and then the cloud and whatever, but it's just that plus just, I mean, what appeared to be the building in front of where the fire was, the windows seemed to, because the smoke came through the windows. I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah. Smoke, vapor, whatever the heck, it was insane. So it gave the impression of, but then again, so, Mark mentioned something to the effect of, well, we should wait till we find out all the information and stuff. And I said, well, I mean, we could do it today just because it's happening now and stuff.
Yeah, my only reservation was the fact that it just happened. And so they don't really know what was going on. There are reports about ammonium nitrate, which is a fertilizer. It's commercially available. I can go down to the store 4 blocks away from me and buy it right now.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a certain different procedures you do with it, certain things you do with it, that it becomes volatile. It's an explosive. And that's what it looked like to me. That wasn't, like I said before, it wasn't natural gas. This was something else entirely. It was a very powerful explosion. And my reservation was that anything we could say right now is speculation. But we have the disadvantage of, as we record this, it's August 4th. And this is the day it happened. And this is going to go out on August 11th. So there'll be a whole week. So a few of the listeners are going to be going, oh man, no, you guys are absolutely wrong. It was this, this, and this. They already know that. And then another percentage are going to be going, there was an explosion. So,
yeah,
that was my only reservation about the whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, so but I think that so when something happens, because it's not like we're gonna. So look, I mean, we've touched on pretty, let's say, fringe topics like reptilian, space aliens, and time travel and what if scenarios and so on. But when it comes to real world, when it comes to a real world events that's ongoing, I don't think that neither you or I can speak for myself. I mean, that neither you or I would take this one thing and then say, I knew it was, the space aliens from the Anunnaki, from 3,500 BC that came here and exploded that, area.
Why is it always the Anunnaki, man? How come it isn't somebody else? Why you always want to diss them?
Do you know about the Anunnaki, though?
Oh, I've heard the phrase bandied around, but let's face it, you hang out in different groups that I hang out in.
No.
You watch different videos that I watch.
Oh, too. Yeah. Probably. I can't say that for sure, but I definitely. But do you know the Anunnaki?
I've heard of it.
So just real quick. And I was watching a video about it the other day.
How did I know this?
So now, this is not a brand new thing, the Anunnaki, but YouTube is brand new in reference to from 2005 this way. But the Anunnaki have been around for millennia. And how have they been around? In the context of text, in Sumerian texts. And then people, take that, the Tower of Babel and whatnot. So there's references to these space gods that came from the stars, and they took man, which was primordial at some level. Man was at some stage that was not, and they said, let us make them close to us. And so they say, now that's Babylonian, like there's a whole thing that came from the stars, and there were kings that lasted for thousands of years, and then they had human kings that were half human, half Anunnaki. And then those kings and the populations, and at some point the Anunnaki left, and it basically bike rides along parallels with a lot of biblical things. And so there's people nowadays, obviously with the conspiracies and whatnot, that will start to intermingle a bunch of things, and so you have what you call now a bunch of space. We were created by space beings, and that we are part space beings without even knowing it. So there's that whole timeline. But I would not, even though I would not associate something like, that's why I'm not afraid of like saying, oh, today there was this that happened, an explosion, because I don't think that we're going to jump out and say it was the robber barons from the 1920s. No, it was we're not gonna
Jimmy Hoffa.
Right, we're not gonna do that. Although I enjoy those themes,
We just did, I think.
right? But I didn't. But I'm being tongue in cheek.
I know that.
I would, even though I like those things, I have somewhat a decent footing in reality to understand that one thing is speculation of the mysteries of that we things unknown, and then there's the concrete things that most people accept as true, and I can navigate through that. So it's not like I'm gonna go and go all crazy and stuff, But
well,
I
that's
enjoy.
Good to know. That's good to know. That makes my job a lot. Then again, it's your Reddit, so go for it, man.
Well, no, I mean, but you did know that before, right? I mean,
I knew that before. Yeah, I mean, we. I don't know. It's kind of strange, and I'm not going to pick apart, our quote unquote roles on the podcast or anything like that. But you tend to be more speculative about what you want to discuss and what you want to talk about. And I tend to be more observational. So when you come up with something that's going to require a lot of speculation out of me, sometimes I'm hard pressed to do it because I'm not very good at that. I'm more observational. So
yeah, I don't know. I don't know that. See, I don't think that that's necessarily. I mean, I'm also what do you call a question? I keep prodding. I also do that a lot. So here's a good example of me prodding that analysis of yours, because I am also. What is it that you said? Questionable?
No, I didn't say you were questionable. I never said you were questionable.
There's speculative and what was the other word?
Speculative and more
observational.
And I'm observational.
Right. Okay, so here's what I would say. I'm actually very much observational as well. So I would take issue with exactly delineating our roles in that. It's just that, like Lennon and McCartney, I hate to say, they both had strengths where they shined, but they both shared these what you call similar attributes, but one would prefer, like Lennon. I'd prefer to be Paul McCartney, but Lennon would be more of the first one that you mentioned, speculative, and then McCartney would be more of the observational. Let's say in terms of, I mean, I guess that's a reasonable, but they both shared both attributes.
Sure.
But one was willing to go in one direction, the other one more so, and the other one was more safeguarded to the other direction.
Now you're very much observant. I will give you that. You are observational. But where I tend to take what I observe at face value, you do tend to take those observations and then speculate from there.
I don't put it in a folder, in a bin. Like, let's say if it's something, I want to reach its conclusion. So I have like cabinets where, let's say, moon landing. Let's just be wild here.
Okay, we've talked about that. Yeah, go for it.
We've talked about it. So like moon landing. So common knowledge is that we went to the moon, came back, did it a few times, did the whole thing, and that's common. And then now there's these people that are speculative in their conspiracies that bring these fantastical things with a lot of good opposition, or apparent good opposition information, opposition information to the narrative that we're all aware of. Not only am I clear on the narrative that we're all aware of and exist within this reality, but when people bring these strange anomalies and things that are on the verge or the cusp of sort of like the mystery and the old timey, just that weirdness, I am quite willing to listen to that and then I can't come to a conclusion because things aren't there's no provable thing, but I do put it in a little drawer and slam the door and say, okay, there's that drawer.
But a lot of it is provable thing. And
Mhm.
but what I'm wondering here now, you've opened up another interesting topic here. It's great to be open-minded and it's good to listen. But there comes a point where you're listening to somebody explain something to you and they say something and you go, up, that's horse hockey. And it's horse hockey because how willing are you to keep listening when you've caught them and you know, no, you don't understand. You're just 100% wrong. Like I'll give you one example. They talk about the moon landing, for instance. There's a picture of one of the astronauts, and I don't remember the names. There's a picture of one of the astronauts standing there holding the flag, and you can see in his visor the reflection of the astronaut who took his picture. And folks are saying that that's evidence that this is all hokey because the guy isn't holding up a camera. The astronaut taking the picture isn't holding a camera.
Mhm.
Well, did they really honestly think they went up with a Kodak Instamatic and held it up to their visors with those gloves and went click and then wound the frame to the next picture and held it up and went click again? No, the camera is on his chest. And if you look, you see one hand up there taking the photo.
I'm going to have to interject with you on this thing.
So you just only have to look at the picture.
Okay, two
to
things.
see the camera.
Well,
Yeah.
two things.
Mm-hmm.
Those cameras, okay, two things. Number one, and I'm going to be like a little confrontational here. Number one,
yeah, go ahead.
By you using that example, it tells me that just like what we said in the beginning, you have not spent necessarily any serious amount of time listening or reviewing any,
because I've rejected it. You're right.
Okay.
I haven't listened to it because that little bell goes off in my brain that goes ding dong.
I get that, but here's the problem with that. The example you used is addressed quite reasonably. Mind you, there's a difference between one saying, you know, that the conspiracy is reasonable and provable, and another thing is saying that the example that you're using,
that's just one of many,
is well, but and it's not that it's an unreasonable example necessarily, but the fact of the camera being there, these people are totally aware of that, and the intricacies of their arguments are outside of that analysis that you gave. You haven't seen the depth of
no.
I'm not.
You're right. Because I'm not paying attention to them.
Right, but I'm not suggesting by me saying that they're right. Okay,
right.
But what I'm suggesting is that people that say no, that's wrong because it's just silly, may be completely right, but they've not looked at, maybe because they don't have the time for that nonsense, maybe because they just don't really want to deal with it, maybe because whatever reason, but it's not entertaining for them, it's not worth the time and effort. It's just a bunch of things. But when someone from outside that group of conspiracy people hears someone from outside that group of conspiracy people using examples like that, it's a disqualifier. Not that it matters to the people outside, but the people inside say, look, they're not even looking at the actual. And so it's
okay. What actual? That's my whole point. There are just, and we're rehashing the moon landing again. There were just
an example. This could be anything.
This is just an example.
It could be anything from space,
and that's
aliens,
what I'm doing.
Whatever.
And that's what I'm doing. I'm taking apart the examples they give. The photo of the footprint. They say, aha, that photo proves there is moisture on the ground holding that footprint together. It is too clean. It's too nice. There has to be moisture, and there is no moisture on the moon. when I say that's BS and you can prove it to yourself by going and getting a bag of flour and putting it down on the ground and step on it, you will see a perfect footprint. It molds to the shape of the boot and compacts. That was dust.
Yeah, but that's not their. That's
You
not.
know?
That's not.
That's not the main argument, but they
That's
are.
not even. That's not even their argument. So here's the
They
problem.
are proposing that. I have seen that proposed, as well as the photo, as well as various different shadows and lights and the flag moving.
Imagine if you will. Imagine if you will. A group of people around the world, and to detach this from this particular issue, because we could use this, or we could use, dare I say it, what do you call the chemtrails? We could use any number of, but let's detach it from any of these specific things. If you have a group of people, I mean, you could do this even with history. This kind of issue occurs even with. There's always a situation where you have a standard, which is usually controlled and taught in schools, at least within modern era, and going throughout history. You have a standard, and even in religion and everything, you have gatekeepers. Now, not using the word gatekeeper derogatory like, but that's just their station, that this is how this functions, and then you've got these people coming in from all around the world with different, independently, and sometimes gathering together and researching topics, and they throw the topics at the wall and see, which ones can break through the windows and whatnot. And those two groups of the norms, the standard day to day, and the people that are investigating. Now, these two groups can actually be the same group. The controllers and the people pushing back can be the same group in many topics. But in some areas, there's conflict. And then you have that in the history of the world with history.
I get that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to debate a topic, you should know what you're talking about, number one, and then present logical evidence and progress the debate there. I'm not saying don't debate, and I'm not saying don't challenge ideas. But if you're going to come have a battle of wits, you should at least be armed. For instance, May 18th, 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted. They knew starting in March there was increased seismic activity. There were huge earthquakes up there. So March, in fact, my birthday, March 27th, a huge earthquake hit the area, and a steam eruption happened at the summit, a very small steam explosion. And all of a sudden, a bulge formed on one face of the mountain. And the U.S. Geological Survey is screaming, get these people out of here. And people were going, earthquakes happen all the time. Nothing's going to happen. They finally got the state police to listen. The governor listened, and they got a bunch of people out. Well, a lot of people ran off into the woods and hid and just stayed. May 18th, 1980, it erupted. So you had a bunch of people who were the standard bearers, the norms, like you talking about, saying earthquakes happen all the time. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to happen. The U.S. Geological Survey came in with evidence, and they showed something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. They challenged the norm, and they were right. Something did happen, and 57 people died. So if you're going to challenge something, if you want to tell me that we didn't land on the moon, for example, and here is a logical, well laid out, well presented debate with evidence, I'll listen to you. You may just change my mind. It's happened before. But if you're going to start using examples that are half-cocked, it's kind of like that guy Eric von Däniken with the Chariots of the Gods, saying that the Nazca lines out there on the Atacama Desert are only visible from the air. He's wrong. He's just factually wrong about that. You walk 6 feet up the side of the hill, you can see them. They're right there. They're not only visible from the air.
Let me take a step back,
So
because you're going into specific scenarios.
well,
Right.
I'm using that as kind of an example of when I say that if it's okay to speculate, and it's okay to question, and it's okay to debate, because that is how the truth is found. You know, we don't find the truth just by accepting the first word that comes out.
Yeah.
But if you're going to present an argument, present a well thought out argument and have evidence.
Okay, so let me go back to the first, so the Mount St. Helens situation. Those people that refused the life-saving information
Mhm.
of these government agencies, you know, looking at it from an outside point of view, from outside of the scenario, and with the vantage point of distance in time, and distance as well, but but looking at it from that from here, it's easy to say, get out of Dodge.
Mm-hmm.
But why someone like, with my sort of way of thinking, with in the context of this, would think not only that,
Mm-hmm.
because it's reasonable, 1 + 1 equals 35, 1 + 1 equals 2. And I get that, like I mentioned, at the outset of this, like I totally understand the normal procedures, but then there's these curiosities and these pushbacks that occur. But looking at that, I'm thinking, these people, what kind of people were they? How much trust did they have in the government? A lot of things occur because of a whole series of things. People react because of a whole series of historical things.
Understood.
So there's also suspicion towards authority, which is a healthy thing. But in that case, it was not a healthy thing.
Well, but when you also take a look at, and again, you're right, we have 40 years of 2020 hindsight from Mount St. Helens, okay? Because it was 40 years ago this last May 18th that it blew. But a huge earthquake hit on my birthday, March 27th, 1980. And they were right. The people that lived there were right. Earthquakes do happen there quite often, but not several a day for 3 months or 2 months. And the mountain never bulged. And there was not a steam explosion on the summit. You could look up at that mountain and you could see, oh yeah, something's happening. And a lot of people got out of there on their own before the U.S. Geological Survey ever waved the red flag. They just looked at that and said, oh no, nothing good's going to come of this. And they split, because there were 3 towns around three towns and a resort on Spirit Lake. So a lot of people took it upon themselves to just get out of Dodge, and, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But there was that one little element who were, like you were talking about, and saying exactly that. I don't trust the government. The government's full of BS. Nothing's going to happen. Look at the bulge on the side of the mountain.
Well,
That's a bunch of BS.
I'm thinking, what would have been the reasons for them not to, and trust of the government is one thing that pops into my head. Local government, federal government, who knows what.
And it's a valid thing. It is a valid thing, because up here people don't trust the government. Education
level, like knowledge of just many things. I mean, there's so many things that can. But here's the thing. If you planted that choice in my lap, without it actually being happening, but you planted it on my lap for me to decide, like, okay, people come to my door and knock, officials and this and that. Look, Mr. Escagedo, there's going to be a terrible whatever in this area. We're evacuating this and that. Now, if I'm presented with that, I have no choice in my worldview, if that's the story, but to lock my doors, take my puppy dog with me, get into my jalopy, and frickin' hightail it. Because I balance out things that you should balance out, which
And
is your life and the probability or possibility percentage of you frickin', losing your butt. So I'll go ahead and do the reasonable, just like the mask. I wear the mask everywhere. Well, go ahead.
I was just going to ask you and put it into terms that you are more than familiar with because you've lived there all your life. They say there's a Category 5 hurricane bearing down on Miami, and this sucker is more powerful than anything they have seen in recorded history. Now, I know your mistrust of certain officials of the area. Are you going to believe them? You can see it on the news. The governor is the government. Okay, well, hold on. The governor is issuing mandatory evacuation for Miami-Dade. Get out of Dodge. Get out of the area. Now, so you have this information, and you can go on the news. You can go online. You can see the track from the Miami news stations. You can see it from NOAA. You can see it from satellites from foreign countries who hate us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're even reporting, holy cow, Miami's going to be in a world of hurt with this one. Do you tend to go, okay, well, there's overwhelming evidence, I need to get out of Dodge? Or do you just ignore it and say these people don't know what they're talking about?
Well, I just gave you.
Yeah, and that's where I was going to go. And now I see what you're saying about.
But at the same time, to be fair, since humans are a complicated thing, I've not left for a single hurricane in the past, all my life.
Okay. But when they say a hurricane is coming, do you doubt them?
No, I don't.
There you go. See, you have history with you. And if something different was happening, something just ain't right, something different about this, you take notice.
Yes. And
like all the seismic activity around Mount St. Helens, people knew it. I mean, you feel a 5.0 earthquake. That's not normal, especially 2 or 3 a day, plus hundreds of little small ones. That's not normal. And so to sit there and say, earthquakes happen all the time, not like this, they don't, homeboy.
Well, now you're looking at a life and death situation now, but also, so putting that one to the side, so it would be reasonable for anybody, but you could understand. It would be reasonable. So the most reasonable for the securing of your life and that of your family and so on, this and that, the most reasonable action one could take in these situations would be to take off, to avoid, to lower the risk of fatality and etc. That would be but we do all sorts of things that increase the risk, of damage.
We do.
Humans are complex, we're complex.
And they're just plain stubbornness.
There's also stubbornness, and there's also, what do you call, what's the word? You do repeatability. I forget the best word to use, but we're habitual. We're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
So what ends up happening is that we like our cyclical activities, even if they're not good, but we're comfortable because it's the known. The unknown makes us uncomfortable.
Understood.
So when you reach the extremes of what, the hive, and that's just using a term, but when you reach the extremes, if somebody comes up to you and says, and this is just such a random thing, but did you know that the planet of Neptar is about 75 decibels of sound away from crushing our earlobes, and that the Andromedans are going to be, and they give you, it's reasonable for you to just say, this guy's a nut job. Whereas if I hear the guy, I think, and I'm assuming that's what you would think, but just to finish this off, if a guy comes up to you in the middle of the street, right, dressed like some hippie with like flower power chains and like one of those old silk and long hair and stuff, smoking like, and he's like, hey man, the planet Andromeda is going to be hitting us with sonic like sound waves, and guess what? Because the reptilians, and he's mixing and matching and all these things, and then because Christopher Columbus, and then this, and just like the whole freaking, he's just throwing the kitchen sink at you, and you hear that. I'm gonna, and you correct me. I think that you would think, I don't think that you'd go, hey, sucker, I'm going to punch you out. I think you'd say, this guy's a whack job in your mind and try to avoid that. But that's what I think you do. You correct me if I'm wrong. What I would do is exactly the same as you would do, except that, and you correct me if I'm wrong, because you might do this too. I'd walk away and I would start to think, he said this, he's a freaking nut job. And he's like going to 11 when the volume should be at 1. So like, let's say there's reptilian people, right? And it's a freaking fact because the information, let's say, but people don't want to know it because they're blinded by, society at large, like all the stuff we know. But you can't really do it. I mean, there's information. So the volume, the level is at 1 or maybe 0.05 or something. Don't pump it up like, did you know there's something called alien races of Andromeda and this and that? Pump it. You don't do that. So I would go away with it thinking, he said this, and that. Does that make, is there some sense that can be made of how he's rational? I will think in terms of trying to see how he rationalizes what the hell he's saying. Not for years sitting there contemplating, writing books about the guy, but enough so that I'm thinking, man, how did he come to that conclusion and why? I would spend a little time trying to figure that part out.
I would spend about 4 seconds, and it would probably come down to something like this. Go with the medication, man. Stop trying to fight it. Your day will go much smoother.
Right.
Work with the medication. Let it do its magic.
Hey, in the Greek Isles, there were philosophers that were treated harshly for their concepts because at the time those concepts were against complete the world at large as it stood, and its fountain of knowledge as it stood, and its hierarchies. And those people, those philosophers, were thrown rocks at, were freaking killed, assassinated, went off to live. So looking hindsight, into the distant future, distant past, societies at large disliked because it disrupted, it made uncomfortable the standard living, which was quite, reasonable. Look, we're getting water, but these people, we still study to this day because there was fountains of knowledge there.
Some of them study to this day. Some people study them to this day. Most people just want to be left alone. They don't want to be preached at like that. No. Some of the philosophers are just, let's face it, some of them were just off their nut and didn't know what they were talking about.
No, but see, you're I think that you're, okay. All right. You know what you're doing? You're taking like a, go ahead.
Aristotle, for example, not a stupid man, not a dumb man, but he stated that flies had 4 legs. Just as an example, he stated that flies have 4 legs, and for 300 years, nobody bothered to count. If Aristotle said it, it was true. For 300 years, then somebody else came along and said, I think if you count, you'll find that there are 6 legs. Aristotle was wrong. Yes,
but
he was wrong.
That's kind of like, isn't that kind of making my, isn't that, do you see what you just did?
But what I'm getting at is it was a fallacy from the get-go.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. If you're going to come up and make a statement, have something to back you up. Have some proof. That's all I'm getting at.
Right, but do you see what? But do you see what you? So the premise. So you're saying that, and I would argue that these people put up, all across the spectrum, put up a lot of proofs. But that's and I'm using it as a blanket, for all the disciplines, be it history. Oh, who really were the Carthaginians, and who were these people? And wait a second, but
Now,
like,
that's cool. That I'm with you on.
no, but I'm not. No, but I'm not. But see, it's the same principle.
Mhm.
Okay. It's the same principle on the level of where my point is. People pushing back at concepts, history, and all these things. Not all are equal. It doesn't. I'm not trying to say, if, as last example, I'm not trying to say that if there's a history of painting,
Mhm.
and some guy says, no, you can paint with spit, and stuff, and he's trying to push that into the modern, whatever, as an example, you're just ridiculousness, right? I understand,
Mhm.
but a lot of things that are assumed to be ridiculous because the mainstream holds it as ridiculous, but there's no actual prodding into what these extreme views really have to offer. And I'm not suggesting that we must accept lizard people in the world. I don't believe that, but I find it curious. So I care. But you see what I'm saying? So I have a
I do see what you're saying, but my broader point in all of this is when you're talking about exploring the physical and the tangible, I'm right there with you. You want to explore where the Carthaginians came from. Let's explore it. You want to know where the Phoenicians came from. You want to know where their civilization, it didn't just sprout up overnight. Where did the Phoenicians come from? I'm with you 100% there. But it's very difficult, and frankly, it's impossible to really explore the psychological or the intangible because all you can do is speculate. There's not a conclusion. That's not entertaining to me because you spend your life walking around having nothing but what if moments, and life has passed you by while you're pondering.
No, okay,
it's just not entertaining for me.
I agree what you're saying, but life is not just solid information without sort of coming to so life well, let me just say this
let's
life,
separate imagination from philosophy. That's all I'm saying.
but okay, but so I just want to say that life is not just a petri dish.
No, you're right.
And the thing about it is that there is a thing called psychology. It might be that a certain group of people scattered throughout the world are not interested in that level. Not that it's any better or less or this or that, but it's just not really the focus of their thing. Maybe some of it interest. I'm saying there's all these things that make up, say, history. There's all these things, and there are stories. Stories, sure. Speculation is part of human. We do it all the time because
I agree with you.
We don't walk around with like references with us on every point. And so if we want to dig, that's why like scholars and stuff, they do the referencing at the bottom of pages.
And again, we're exploring the tangible. Yeah.
Right. But a lot of these, we're exploring the tangible, but we make a lot of, so look, it depends on how you define it and what level. I'm just saying this, that I'm willing to entertain weirdness because weirdness may have value, not on the level of its scientific purpose, but it can have value probably in a scientific, but it can have value in a story or history level, or it can have, there's value in these things possibly. So I don't discount, things right off the bat all the time. I do it because we're human beings, and you have to navigate what you're interested in and this and that. But I'm willing to explore a little bit these things.
And that's why I say I'm more observational and you're more theoretical and more. What did I say before? I said I was more observational and you are more.
I forget. You said
I forget.
observational. We remember observational,
Mhm.
but I think that
Because see, if it number one, if it doesn't interest me, I check out of the conversation. I'm like, okay, fine. Well, the Orioles, they're doing pretty well. How about the Red Sox? I just if I'm not interested, I'm not interested, and I don't care what it is. It could be something. It could be a rock, a certain type of rock. You pick up, you look at your hand. Okay, great, it's a rock. I'm just not
I
interested
don't know, man.
beyond
I think I'm very and by the way,
that.
that that you just said is what everybody really does, but there's a threshold of what they're
Right.
willing to entertain. So
Exactly.
I have this thing, and a lot of people, it's not just, there's a lot of people that are quite willing to and some people will go hog wild and believe the thing, but I'm not on that level of that. I'm going to believe this. I'm not walking around and
Right.
thinking that I'm going to fall off the face of the earth and this and that, but I will listen to see what
Well,
they say. I will. I'm interested.
I'll give you a microcosm of what I'm talking about. I have a niece and a couple of other people I know that are massive Doctor Who fans. I have watched one episode of Doctor Who when I was a kid, and it was okay. I'm not one of you guys. I'm not one of you Whovians, okay? I'm not one of you. I'm not interested. But I have a niece who keeps saying, if you would watch a couple of episodes, you would just fall in love with it. I don't care. I'm not interested. I like things. I just don't like those things. I saw it when I was a kid. It was all right. I'm the same way with Star Trek. I saw a couple episodes when I was a kid. I kind of liked the one that had Abraham Lincoln in it. I'm not one of you. I just don't care. I like things. It's just not those things.
Right.
You
But
know?
that's a far cry from saying I don't like something. And you can even do that you did say, well, the camera, as in going back to the thing, the camera is really here. It's not like they're holding up a camera and this and that. You could do something like that, and it's a disqualification, and it's like rounding the base of this whole world of independent people looking at things like cameras and this and that. You could do that, and it's obviously because you're not interested to the point of like, well, wait a second, let me see, is that? But it doesn't do justice to use that because you're disqualifying.
I'm disqualifying after I educated myself. I listened because I did listen to these kinds of things because it did interest me at one time. Okay,
Did you listen to the guy that actually built the cameras?
No, because this was pre-internet. This was years ago. I first started hearing about the moon landing was fake when I was 12 years old. So we're looking at 1973. This was way pre-internet. And it's like, well, they're saying that and that was one of the arguments presented, the footprint, the flag moving, they put the flag on the ground and it continues to wave. See, there's movement. That means there's wind. No, it means there's movement. He stabbed it into the ground. There is still motion, even though there's no atmosphere. It doesn't just automatically stop.
There's an argument.
So when they present all these things as evidence and you look into the evidence and you go, it wasn't automatically discounting, because it's like, yeah, where is the camera? How come the guy supposedly taking the picture isn't using a camera?
Yeah, but that's not the argument that's
and then well, not anymore. It's not. But it was at the time,
no,
and the footprint and the flag and all the other good stuff.
But see, here's the problem. Person.
No, let me finish. Let me finish. What I'm saying is I saw these arguments. This was the evidence presented as to why this was fake, because of this. And then so I looked into it, and I was, oh, well, the camera's mounted on his chest right here. That's why he's not holding nothing up.
Okay, here's my point. If somebody says, "Listen, man, the camera had to be in their hands and this and that," no, because the camera, if they do that whole thing, and you're saying like, okay, look at this. This is a ridiculous thing. I get that. Now, Putting that to the side for a moment, you do know that one person represents one person, and it doesn't represent this whole world of people. That person might be erroneous, might be factual, but it's just one person. If you take for instance religion, just to use religion, guess what? There's a thing that we all understand. There's many religions. Let's say Christianity. There's people that say that's a bunch of hogwash because of this, because of Jonah and the whale. That whale story is what did it for me. I'm done with the Bible because of Jonah. That's it. Jonah. Or another one, because there's too much evil in the world. There's no way that can exist. Nope. Disqualified, period. And these same people, you turn around and look at their lives, and they may be doctors, they may be hoodlums, they could be doctors, they could be lawyers, they could be political figures, they could be all sorts of things. And one category doesn't level them on another. On the other side of it, some people might argue on the level of religious doctrine and this and that. So there's this whole world of people doing all these crazy pushbacks and push forwards. Right. And it's totally normal, to do so. It's when people take action that, against others and this and that is when things start to go. But people, there's always this pushback.
Right.
But there are walls of authority, with good reason. We're not going to reinvent the wheel, but there's walls of authority, but it doesn't all hang on the wheel. There's other things in this authority category that need to be broken down or tested or pushed and prodded.
Right.
At just as much.
But how many times do you have to put your hand on the stove to figure out it's hot?
Well, yeah, like I mentioned before,
you can have a philosophical belief that the stove is only lukewarm, but semantics aside, it's going to be freaking hot when it's red. Yeah. There are certain things that are just kind of cut and dried and not open for debate. I'm sorry. Water is wet. You can't argue your way out of it. And if you put your head underneath it and try to inhale, nothing good's going to come from it. So when presented with an argument about, oh no, this didn't happen because the moon landing didn't happen because of this, I'll listen to it because of this, and then I'll look into that and see what that is. All right. Is there an explanation for it?
We use the moon as an example. There's so many other things, but
there is a ton of them.
We're using the moon thing, but there's a ton of them. But go ahead.
Oh yeah, chemtrails.
Right. Well, let's switch to something else so that people don't.
Well, that started with the HARP program in the 1990s. Oh, okay. So you're telling me that all of the video footage, all of the 16 and 35 millimeter film that was shot over Europe during World War II, showing those high altitude bombers leaving long persistent contrails, those are all fake. Every one of them that I've seen since the 1960s. That's all my imagination.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I get that. There's things that you and by the way, let's just also put into the mix that we have another situation with all of this as well, which is, and I'll throw this into the mix. We also have this problem, which is what we call the reset button. The reset button is, and has nothing to do with Jim Dockrell's saying, remember the time the earth exploded and they took a bunch of population on a spaceship and put them in suspended animation. So the reset button, scenario is that every generation we have a reset button of people, and we kind of alluded to this in a previous episode when talking. We have a reset where we have new generation of people. I mean, actually, it's going on every single minute as new babies are being born, of people new humans, it sounds like a cool, that have to learn it all over again, whilst
Yeah.
the older generation that has experienced X, Y, and Z and have gathered this knowledge
Yeah.
are on the way out.
Mhm.
And so this constant rotation of learning, in between the mix of learning from day one on,
Mhm.
um, a lot of things can happen, a lot of beliefs, and these are the shifts of time in humanity,
Right.
whether we go into some sort of dictatorship, or whether we go into some sort of like technology based, or whether or not people build houses that are round, or it just all these factors, whether it just everything is so interconnected. So all I'm saying is that um, these arguments live on as well, even some of the most, I guess,
Goofy ones.
let's say goofy ones, will live on as people. I mean, when you were a kid, you probably were. Well, we've had an episode of that, of the unknown,
Mhm.
and these things follow us, and these are psychological things too. So I'm just saying that there's all these things that occur, but I do not. I will reject that you categorize me in the speculative was the word,
Speculative. That was the one.
because I
You are more willing to speculate than I am.
right, but I don't hang
That's
my
all I
hat.
meant.
Right, but okay, so fair enough. I don't hang my hat like in no. Even though we've touched on, what is it, moon landing? We've touched on reptilians. We've touched on, because I
We,
remember the
we've
photo.
we've hit every third rail you could imagine. We went to religion, the moon landing, UFOs, psychology. I think there may have been Ecuadorian space midgets in there, but I'm not certain of that. But
But
you know,
I'll tell you. I'll tell you. So um, there's also an entertainment factor, because I'm not also out to, like in my personal case, I'm not also out to like discover the great. Well, I'd love to discover the great myths of ancient times, and so I love that stuff. But it is a constant curiosity, and I guess, and I've said it before, I can also categorize it with entertainment and whatnot. For me, like I love those ancient Egypt things, and how did they build the pyramids and all that. All these things. I mean, copper, at the
yeah,
time, and then there's all these things, and so these aren't tangible things, like you were mentioning earlier, that you said a word that you used. Um, these aren't things that you can know.
mhm,
Like, we don't have the people in front of us doing those activities for us to say
right,
that, oh, okay, that's how the blocks were, perfectly united and
yeah,
in such a way, and this and that. And then speculation occurs, but there's evidence along the way, and archaeological. I just enjoy that whole world obsessively a little bit, probably. Like, I really enjoy ancient Egypt stuff, medieval Europe.
I like some of it. I like some of medieval Europe. I do like a lot of history, but I'm I'm less willing to entertain the outlandish, I guess is what I'm saying.
But what you categorize do you think that the Anunnaki that we started out with is outlandish?
I think some of it is, but I think a lot of it, well, I, to be honest, I never really researched it all that heavy. I've heard some things that are perfectly reasonable. I've heard some things that are, you know, when you take, and this borderlines on the other third rail, when you take a culture that is trying to explain itself and it has no written records. All it has is the stories that have been passed down. Things get morphed and twisted. You played the game telephone when you were a kid.
Yeah.
So you see how things get morphed and twisted just by going around a group of about 10 kids. Some of that morphing and twisting is intentional. People will hear whatever the sentence is and then say something different in someone else's ear
Yeah, we did that. We would
on
mess it up.
purpose
We
just to
would mess
mess it up.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you start out with Strawberry Fields Forever and you end up with Why Don't We Do It in the Road? You
Yeah.
know that's not a natural corruption of any of those words. Somebody threw that in there.
Yeah.
But it's Now that train of thought just left the station and somebody flushed.
Information throughout time
Yeah.
that gets passed down.
Yeah, information, it's going to get embellished. Part of it's going to get lost. And pretty soon, when people are trying to explain their existence and their environment, the only way they know how, myths become reality. You know, the Roman gods, the Greek gods were very real to them, to the Greeks and to the Romans. They were explaining their being the only way they knew how. But when you get somebody like Pliny the Elder that comes along and says the cure for a headache is to take the testicles of a fox and tie them in a leather thong made from the skin of a black donkey and tie that around your forehead, and that will cure your headache. And he presents that as scientific fact. You got to wonder how many of those Greeks were walking around with fox testicles dangling in front of their eyes.
I mean,
You know?
Look, I totally. So, according to each era, going back in time, we increase in knowledge and things go out of favor and some things remain with us. And what's effective, but not always, what's effective for humanity to resolve issues on whatever level you might want to think, on a house day-to-day issue, on whatever, whether it's paper money because it's easier than hauling around a basket of, I don't know, gold and whatever rare metals, or whatever the case might be.
Right.
Throughout time, we keep the good stuff that's beneficial to us to make life easier for us in general, but
Right.
not always. We also haul with us some things that are untrue,
Right.
ineffective. And if it happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago, if it happened 1,000 years ago, it's still happening to this day on things that today seem reasonable to us. But in the future, if we look at probability throughout time going in the past of all the things we've been wrong about, just imagine using that same lens looking forward, all the things today that we're wrong about. The window might shrink because we've increased so much in knowledge, but we're nowhere near. I mean, dude, just 100 years ago, people weren't keeping the records, and they were doing a great job for the times. But if you go back 200 years, the records were like 300 years, even worse. And you go back, things as simple as, since I'm doing the genealogy, as who's your grandfather's grandfather's grandfather. Very simple. Through the churches took care of that. Some people might not believe in the church thing, but look, they did this job. So there's balance with all these things.
Yeah. And you also have to factor in the decay of facts too. I mean, medical students are taught to this day that probably by the time they graduate medical school and get into an internship, probably about a quarter of what they have learned will have later been found to be false or inaccurate for some reason. I mean, look at the different ways we're treating things medically now than we were 20 years ago. And 20 years ago was the year 2000. So we're not talking about Stone Age. We're not talking about leeches or maggots here and bloodletting. We're talking about as our knowledge progresses and we find out certain things that we thought were correct turn out to be not correct or inaccurate. That forwards our knowledge. That our knowledge progresses that way, you know. So I don't know. I guess what I'm getting at is as I get older, I am less and less inclined to listen to something that I think is ridiculous, unless it's compelling. If you've got a compelling argument and you've got some kind of evidence, then let's see it. you may change my mind. It happens. It happens quite often because I'm only human. I have preconceived notions about certain things. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to admit it. You know what? You were absolutely right. It isn't like this. It's like that. Okay, cool, great.
Yeah, I mean, something
But,
like,
but
yeah.
don't come at me with ridiculousness. That's all. I'm more willing to dismiss the ridiculous
Well, people don't
as I
know.
get older.
People don't know what you would consider ridiculous and what's your definition at what the bar is set at. Because what's ridiculous for one person, a la religion,
Mm-hmm.
is completely serious for another person. And both people, if you look at the history of mankind, both people can be and have been, some of them included our founding fathers, but worse than that, or more outrageous than that, some of them are scientists throughout time, explorers that actually plotted and charted their ways to the Americas, and it just keeps going. So, there's ridiculousness is what in what you're saying is what is that threshold, because I can tell you what my threshold is that guy that I was telling you about saying and the planets and the moon and this and that at the beginning, with the beads and stuff. I would say this is ridiculous, but like I said before, I would walk away and say, how did he reason that out? Is there a way that I could if I were him with all that, and I'm not saying I'd spend the day on this, but I'm saying that I'd walk away as I'm walking to the car after buying some Tic Tacs or whatever, and I'd be thinking, holy smokes, now how would I? So I would give it in more than often than not, give it the time to see if that puzzle fits somehow to reason out that the sky is not totally I would do that.
Well, it depends on what the situation, but if I walk outside on a cold winter's day and I see tracks in the snow, I am more inclined to believe that those are bear tracks than they are the tracks of gnomes and fairies.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's if I walk outside of, man, I can't tell. Is that a dog? Is that a coyote? Is that a cat? What is that? And my neighbor says, oh no, that's gnomes and fairies. They were out here earlier trying to steal your hubcaps.
Yeah.
Go back in the house, Jeff.
So basically, there's a history of things that we know to be true because they repeat themselves, and we're comfortable in that because we know what to expect, and what more often than not, this this thing that we're seeing, let's not go overboard and say that it's something that it's not.
Yeah. Let's just, make it believable anyway. Because it's like, go back in the house, Jeff. You're drunk again. Knock it off. Come on. You're embarrassing yourself and scaring the kids.
Right.
Well, this brings about an interesting question. Okay. So, because I know you're into history and I know you like this kind of thought and this kind of exploration, and we're going to go ahead and don't say it can't happen. I'm going to get speculative here for a minute. If there was such a thing as time travel, is there any one event in history that you would like to go back and witness so that you could find the answer?
I could only be one.
So that you actually knew the answer, went, aha, that's what it is. That's what it was for. That's what it did. Whatever.
I since we were having this discussion, and by the way, the utility of that is on that speculative level, and there's value to that because it shows where people's heads are at and all that. Honestly, because there's a thing that I'm speaking more towards the out towards the audience. I know that we understand this, but just to leave it as a record, and this is known, there's a psychological aspect to things that is quite important because psychology makes people. It describes why people, do the things that they do, what's their trauma, what's their, just all these things that actually affects the world, although it's in a little bit of an intangible level,
sure,
but it's just as valuable. So now that we're talking about all these things, I would go back to the time of Jesus humbly, because that's a big deal. Because the unanswerable, to me, of we exist and then we cease to exist, the paradox of human beings cycling through time, is something that that to me is an important just unknown. So
See,
that would be it.
you're also more philosophical and psychological than I am, because the one event that I would actually like to go back and take a look at and get the answer to is something simple: Stonehenge. Who made it? Why did they make it? What's it for? What's its use? What's its purpose? Because I think we attach a lot of additional meanings to a lot of things, like Stonehenge, like the pyramids in Egypt. But I think what we're doing is we're projecting what we want it to be, and less on what it actually was.
See, it's an interesting. I
So,
mean, I can't this, but I have a question for that, because I'm thinking to myself, you know,
do you think I set my bar too low?
well,
I could go back to the Big Bang, but it
yeah,
wasn't a nice, hospitable place. I'd have a little problem breathing.
so
So,
you're oh, so I can't, your curiosity is your curiosity, but the reason I picked, I'm not trying to say mine is better than yours, but
no.
but I'm thinking to myself that you go to Stonehenge, you're going to see a bunch of druids walking around.
You think? Actually, Druidism wasn't even developed until centuries after Stonehenge was
Yeah,
built.
yeah. Well, look, the Stonehenge thing, there's
Mhm.
actually ample information on
We
it.
still don't know who made it or why.
Yeah, but well,
That's
look,
what I mean. It's speculative. That's why I would like the
okay,
answer. I would like to know the answer.
this is one of those problems. Just like okay, there is. If you were curious as to know,
Mhm.
as much as is known currently about the Stonehenge,
Mhm.
there is a truckload of information, because there's
Right.
waves of people. There's a whole, because I've had to smash into that in my studies,
Right.
and I'm not, footnoting and this and that.
Right.
There's a lot out there, so
I understand that.
you could basically, I'm trying to, you can basically say that that the people that built that and from that area, they came there from the west, from Eurasia, uh, from the west, and entered that.
Okay. But wouldn't you rather have it straight from the horse's mouth?
Well, of course, I'd love to, but
Okay.
if you only
That's
had
so,
one,
huh?
if you only had one time travel event, and by
Well,
the
I
way,
didn't say just one. I just said, what's the one thing you'd like to go back and see? What's one event you would like to go back and see?
I would humbly, because that would be, that would
Mhm.
be what I had mentioned before. That would be a big, just a big deal, because there's also a life existence and
Mhm.
meaning
Right.
around that thing. You wouldn't want to know that.
But you're also forgetting that when we got back, we'd probably be in a hangout and tell each other about our trip.
Yeah. So
So you get back and you tell me the answer. Okay, all right,
no,
fine.
you
And I'll
wouldn't.
give
You wouldn't want to know the. Oh, well, I guess you firsthand. I guess we could switch. Say, hey, I found this, and you
Yeah,
found
I
that.
know. I've just contradicted myself. I know. I understand it. Yeah, but that's not to say that I wouldn't want to go back there the same as you. That's not to say that I wouldn't want to do that. But there are certain little things that I would like to finally get the answer to, just so people would hush about it. Stonehenge being one of them, the Egyptian pyramids being another,
Yeah.
the meaning and the origin and the reason for creating the Sphinx. I would like to just know finally, once and for all, to end the speculation about, well, no, aliens had to come and lay that out. Well, no, they didn't have to come and lay that out. You know,
Yeah.
if the aliens came down here Why would they lay it out for them and not just build the ding dong thing for them? You know,
I mean, we don't. But these are curiosities that obviously that. So, in the context of what we've been talking about today, which I didn't expect us to go in this direction, that would be my, because it kind of boils down to that existence and whatnot. I mean, the ultimate question is to me and people throughout history is like, why are we here? You know, that's like the question. And if you think about it, it's so unanswerable with the limited tools that we have available to us.
True.
It's always the question.
But again, you're more philosophical about it than I am, and I'm more observational and tangible.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
see, you want to know why. Why are we here? Okay, that's great. That's fine. I know that I am here for a limited time, for a short while, as far as I know. So I'd like to know more about the physical, tangible world around me. Because we speculate a lot about various things. Let's forget about Stonehenge. Let's go to any of the pyramids in Central America. Let's go to Machu Picchu. What was the reason for that? Who built it? Why did they build it? Right. You know, let's go get it from them. Just if anything else, to see the look on their face when they see my t-shirt. You know, it's
they probably you know, because I know they supposedly did human sacrifice, so they probably probably think that you're someone that came from space, and they build like
beam me up, Scotty. They've got knives.
You know what I'm saying? Because it's like
yeah. You know, and just to kind of throw a little bit of reality into it here, Jim Dockrell says you may find out who built Stonehenge, but not why. Language barrier. Okay, point well taken. I think that we had this discussion before once in an earlier episode about going back to the 1776, to the birth of this nation. Would they be able to understand us even though we're speaking English and they obviously spoke English? Would we understand them? Would they understand us?
We'd stick out like a sore thumb.
Oh, we definitely would. But I mean, if you take Old English, or not even Old English, if you just take the English that was spoken in the 17 and early 1800s, although it's the same language, the vocabulary was different. Word usage was different.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, fair point, Jim. Language barrier.
Yeah, but you can use your eyes and see, look at all this craziness going on.
Yeah, exactly.
And right. I could be in the Middle East, teleported back there, and I'd be like, because you know what I was thinking? I'd be teleported back, and there's like a McDonald's, a Dunkin' Donuts. I'm walking around. Yeah. I'm waiting till the time is right. I'm looking around and stuff at the hotel, watching cable.
You would also have to learn Hebrew real quick.
Yeah. Well, I think at the time it was Aramaic.
Was it Aramaic? Okay. Well,
look at Eloy throwing down some garbage.
Okay. So point well taken. Where do you go to learn that?
I don't know that it's a living language, that particular thing anymore. I'm not sure about that.
So there's another handicap.
Hey, just final thing. I'll just throw this out. Talking about languages and this and that. When I was 18, 19, 20, in that era, in that time period, I was in church a lot, and I was very much into studying the Bible, and I wanted to learn more, but because of my way I am, even back then, I said, I don't want to read the English alone. I understand it, but I want to. So I bought a Greek, because it was the New Testament was Greek and Aramaic. Mm-hmm. I bought a Greek, and I did buy the Hebrew because they would also translate. They would read into. So I bought both, and I began to study. Mm-hmm. And you could teach yourself, but you need to always, when it's complicated, you need things, and especially when you're, and I read the thing Hanukkah, and they said the correct spelling of Hanukkah and the correct, and I started to read the whole, in Hebrew, I started to learn the letters and how to read it, and so I was at church one day and I had misinterpreted a thing, and I thought that, so a lady said, "Oh, you're studying, in Hebrew and stuff." I said, "Yeah." And, it's funny because the CH is actually pronounced like this, and that. And I was giving her an explanation of a thing. And then she said, "Oh, so instead of," and she told me this, and she says, "Oh, so instead of Hanukkah, it's Shanukkah." Because I looked at her and I said, "That can't be right." I messed up everything I was learning with the CH and the K, and it was wrong. And I felt like an ass, right? I went back and said, "Oh man, I totally screwed up," because I was trying to interpret how they put the two letters together and stuff.
Yes.
And so I made a total mistake. It's just, but it taught me that you could learn down the wrong path.
Yes, you can.
So there's
and that's what I was talking about with the preconceived notions, because I have a lot of preconceived notions and I'm wrong. And when you see CH, what you think is CH, you automatically think that pronunciation. Never mind the fact that it's pronounced completely different.
You had to be there. You would have had to be there, but it was funny because she said, "Oh, so after I explained to her the how these letters," she said, "Oh, so then it's Shanukkah, not Hanukkah." And I looked at her, and I'm thinking to myself, "Man, I screwed that up big time." I walked away like embarrassed and stuff, but I learned. You learn lessons as you go.
Actually, that was a very, very smart woman, because she didn't tell you were wrong. She let you discover that you were wrong yourself, because it meant more to you.
I don't think she knew. I don't think I think that, although you can interpret that,
she knew it wasn't pronounced Shanukkah. She knew that.
No, because we were talking. Hold on. That you don't know her and you don't know the situation.
I don't.
And I'm not trying to. Obviously, I'm not trying to protect myself. I gave you the embarrassment of it. So I'm telling you, she didn't know, because I was telling her interpretations in that language. And so from what I told her, she said, "Oh, so then it's Shanukkah." Not because she was saying it but she was deducting from what I said.
So she didn't know either. Okay, no. Then I withdraw my brilliance.
No, I was saying, "Oh no, look, I've been learning. Check out and look, this is how it's done." And when I threw that at her, she repeated it, and that's when she checked me, not knowing, and checked me, just to be clear about the whole thing.
I thought she did that on purpose. She didn't know either. Okay, so I withdraw my assertion that she was brilliant.
No, and she
may be, but not on that particular one.
No, it was just a natural conversation. But whatever. The gist of it was that I realized that I was making a terrible mistake. I mean, it's a letter, and so you'd be pronouncing words from that point on. In English. Imagine, instead of saying English, Ringrish.
Over in Germany, we were stationed over in Germany, and almost always when we pluralize a word, we add an S or ES. So you have a bus, one bus, two buses. Over there, they don't use the S, they use EN. So you have a Hund for a dog, Hunden for two dogs or more than one dog. Well, I use the example bus. Over there, the word is bus, B-U-S. There are exceptions to that, adding an N to the end of the word, because sometimes that word is already taken. And I found out the hard way that the plural of bus were not busen. It's busa with no end, just the sound, because busen is bosom.
Right.
Well, I didn't know this.
I need to write on your Boozing.
I just asked where the boobs were. That's and where, and instead of where's the bus stop, I asked where the boobs were.
Yeah.
And yeah, you will get a lot of. I mean, he took it well, but it could have been very embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, well, look, I mean, we're going into the
Oh, holy cow!
tour. So, this has been an incredible conversation. I did not know we were going to go into these
We
craziness.
we never know. See, what you folks don't know is there's usually a little bit of panic discussion or a little bit of private messaging back and forth. I haven't got a topic. Do you have a topic? And this is one time where I am speculative because I'm willing to wing it. We always come up with something good. So I'm not concerned if we don't have a topic because the minute you and I start talking, I know we're going to come up with something good.
Yeah, the whole speculative thing, I wanted to distance myself from it in that it's not like I even saw Billy somewhere. He mentioned Eloy. I know Eloy, and Eloy is speculative and this and that. Well, so you can know Eloy. I don't know, and you can say speculative, and I know it's just like in the conversation sense, but that's kind of like a box category. That one step away. Well, no, let me just say that it's one step away in the context of what we're talking about, of just like free for all. I don't care. Space midgets are flying rocket ships on the back. And I'm just trying to suggest with that, and you can listen to our hundreds of episodes or 104 episodes previously by going to the Trampled Underfoot Podcast.com website, and you can check out our past episodes and check out if that's true or not. In some cases, on some topics, you might notice that, in others, maybe not. But you decide. So press the Wayback Machine button, and you can check out those past episodes. They're very entertaining, as well as checking us out over on the Trampled Underfoot podcast page on Facebook, which we're over there as well. You can leave your ideas and responses to things you've heard, and maybe post some things that you might want us to talk about. You can leave that over there as well. But yeah, so you be the judge. You be the judge of that. But I don't want to be boxed in with that. No. We also are sponsored by
Harneal Media. Steve Nealon over there at Harneal Media is a good guy. And I'm going to jump on it one more time. Steve had a little bit of a medical issue last month, and there was a GoFundMe set up for Steve and his lovely wife Pam to help them defray some of these medical bills. There's a link to it down in the description of this video. If you can click on that link, go by, and if you have a couple of extra bucks, leave a few at the door, and we thank you very much. I personally thank you very much. And if not, share it, please. Share it on your social media. Let's get it out in front of some more eyes. Steve and his wife are very near and dear to my heart, and we'd like to help them out as much as we can. But yes, we record these sessions every night. Every night? Nah, not every night. Every Tuesday night. See, that train of thought, man. People keep flushing while it's standing in the station. Yeah, we record these on Tuesday nights at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, right here on our YouTube channel. Come over to the mighty YouTubes and look for Trampled Underfoot Podcast. That's us. Come in, say hi, subscribe, and we'll see you Tuesdays.
That's right. And I do want to say Billy responded to my reaction, and he says, now see, Billy, I'm going to, and by the way, we're just, but see what Billy, see now, check this out, Billy. And this is speculative. I'm going to add this, but he wrote something, and I'm going to read it to you. 2 different ways. First, a certain way, and then the second way. And you tell me. Check this out. This is word for word what Billy wrote. I'm going to read it twice in 2 different ways. I was only saying you have a rather speculative personality, my friend. Or, you see how it all ties in. Or he could have said, I was only saying you have a rather speculative personality, my friend.
Yeah, I don't think Billy could do that head thing.
You know,
He doesn't pull it off.
no, but well, we don't know, but that
Yeah.
don't discredit that. Did you hear the two versions?
Yes, I did. And
So,
there was a lot of sass in that first one, and I just don't think Billy could pull that off.
but in the context of writing and stuff, there is the
Oh yeah.
the issue of emphasis in this and that. Even if you put, you know, you dot and
Oh yeah.
right, you never know. Obviously, I know it's more the normal one than the other.
But even then in text, you got to look at it and you go, wait a minute, he didn't put a smiley or laughy face emoji after that. He's being mean. You know?
No, but no, you don't need. But is that a qualifier? Hold on.
Anymore on social media, it is. You can call somebody the lowest form of life on the planet, but if you put that little smiley face turned kind of cockeyed, laughing until he's crying, they'll go, "Oh, he's just messing around."
Now look at Jim Dockrell. Watch this, Jim. Watch. Oh, I thought you said speculum. Or he could have said, "Oh, I thought you said speculum." See, it could be either or, Jim. I don't know which one you were saying.
We need to bring back the sarcastrophe. That way we have that one more.
Last one I'm going to do, Morgan. Last one I'm going to do. Look at Billy's response, folks. I can't fricking believe this. Listen to him. Yes, it is unfortunate that you can't put inflection in text. You see, Billy, that attitude will get you nowhere. You see what he just said, right, folks? Huh? It's up to you, folks. Anyways, I'm done. I'm done.
We distort, you decide.
I should have done that. You know, that could be a good like side.
I think part of it's already taken.
All right. Okay, so folks, thanks for hanging out with us. We did not know where the heck we were going. To me, it was stimulating because Mark was, you know, throwing stuff at me and I was reasoning stuff out and I enjoyed it quite a lot. And, you know, he got me on the speculative versus observational thing where I wanted to dig into that because I felt I was trying to stake my claim to saying that, hey, don't just box me in here. And I kind of like that. I like that whole dynamic of that, to be able to explore that and stuff. So I enjoyed it a lot. We've gone over the hour. I hope you guys
by about 30 minutes.
I'm not going to do that one, Billy. Billy just see that one's so obvious that you can't even. All right. We're out of here. Catch you next time, folks.
Laters.